We always find our truth in things we hate and run away from. We have always fled from darkness towards the light, and our truth was in the darkness. And we have always fled from wars towards peace, and our truth as human beings was in these wars, which showed us our true ugly nature, which builds the glory of some of us, and the destruction and devastation of others. And we have always fled from evil to good, and our true nature has been evil. We were its inventors, and I believe we did not see an evil nature, an evil inanimate object, an evil flower, or even an evil animal. But we've certainly come across, seen and heard about many evil people who embody the characteristics of devil. Perhaps devil does not actually exist in its conventional sense, but he certainly exists within us, and he represents everything that is ugly in us. So we continue to run away from the truth towards the illusion. In the illusion, we find a beautiful world that we can live and in which there is a degree of respect for ourselves and a degree of confidence that there is something good within us. Something can be built and not destroyed. Something can be planted and grow. But as I said, they are illusions. Man's love for idealism makes him run away from his reality of exploitation of the people around him and everything else around him. And our self-loathing makes us deny over and over again that we were created from chaos. So from chaos we found ourselves, and to chaos we return. The nature of chaos is somewhat complicated, as it makes us away from the question of whether we are good or evil. Rather, it makes us ask another different question, which is if we are, as we believe we are, good, then how long will we remain this way? Chaos answers this question and says that the good in us is not permanent and is destined to disappear when we go through our own chaos, when we are full of doubt, uncertainty, fear of the unknown, and doubt of everything we believe in. It tells us that the goodness in us is not our nature, but rather part of the illusion created by humans through evolution and the civilization they built. So when chaos spreads and civilization is destroyed, we return to our nature as our ancestors were. As a result of hunger, disease, fear, destruction, anger, and the desire for revenge, we turn to Savior, who will save us from our chaos. And in a difficult time like this, we will not find a Savior other than human demons, and more precisely, tyrants. Tyrants' chaos proves to us over and over again that we are not the only creatures that create illusions, but it also proves to us that we are the most cowardly and fearful of creatures. Perhaps this is because of the survival instinct within us. And our excessive faith is nothing but strong evidence of excessive fear within us. Our fear of the unknown, our fear of ourselves, and our fear of our enemies. Fear is a powerful and often effective weapon for creating faith. In a time of chaos, you do not want discussions. You do not want a plurality of opinions. You do not want majority rule. You do not want minority rights. You do not even want freedom or humanity. Rather, all you want at this moment is belief in one opinion, one right, and one ruling that can save you from the mess you are in. The devils of mankind know about these habits, so they work to destroy our old faith and create a new alternative faith in order for it to be a means of reform for them, and a new means for a new illusion for us. So they create for us new enemies, new problems, and new ways to serve the nation. They create for us not only a new faith and a new illusion, but they create for us a new life with a different ideology, meaning that they give us what we want from lies, delusion, and deception, and they give us something new in which we can claim idealism and humanity and continue to hide for other generations until chaos comes again and the old demons die. In February 1923, Hitler was sentenced to 5 years in prison in Landsberg, along with several other leaders. While Hitler was in prison, he wrote one of the most controversial books of the 20th century, Mein Kampf, in which he summarized all his extremist views and autobiography. On December 20th, 1924, Hitler was pardoned and released from prison, and he immediately regained control of the Nazi Party. But since the German economy was now in good health, he also recognized that seizing power through violence was counterproductive. Hitler decided to now seek control of Germany by political or peaceful means. But between May 1924 and 1928, Hitler's popularity only diminished as he received only 800,000 votes in 1928. Compared to nearly 2 million votes 4 years earlier, which means that failure seemed certain. Then in October 1929, the Great Depression occurred, which caused the collapse of the global economy and caused a state turmoil. Because the German economy was relatively weaker than most, as it still had huge debts, inflation rose significantly, which in turn led to mass unemployment and a shortage of food all over the country. This, more than anything else, gave Hitler and his Nazi Party the ammunition they needed to seize power, and as the population became more desperate, the Führer escalated his campaign using modern technologies, such as the airplane, which enabled him to deliver speeches in several different cities in one day during increasingly frequent national elections, along with the increasing public presence of the Nazi Party in the form of the brown shirts, or the Salvation Army. Hitler made a forceful leap onto the national stage, which, coupled with widespread unrest, increased his vote share. He promised the German people bread and work, which seemed like a godsend at the time. This state of crisis, combined with increasingly irregular elections, led to a hung parliament with the Reichstag, which means that no political party has an absolute majority. This stagnation then prompted senior politicians to write to head of state Paul von Hindenburg, recommending that Hitler be appointed Chancellor of Germany. On January 30, 1933, Hitler immediately sought to claim complete control of the country and asked Hindenburg to dissolve parliament so that new elections could be held in March. But a month later, in February 1933, the Reichstag caught fire and burned to the ground, and Hindenburg issued the decree that suspended all basic civil rights and allowed detention without trial. The Nazis were quick to blame the far left for the conflagration that led to the closure of the German Communist Party, and the Reichstag voted on the empowerment resolution that gave Hitler control over the country, Germany, for 4 years, and enabled him to pass laws without the approval of the country's parliament. In voting on his law, the Reichstag effectively signed his own execution order. Hitler now began an ambitious plan to rebuild the economy by abolishing austerity and instigating loans for a massive public works program, which in turn reduced the country's unemployment figures. We cannot see our strength until we are able to see the weakness of our enemies, and we cannot see our goodness until we see the evil of our enemies. We cannot see our advantages until we see the flaws of our enemies. Our hatred for enemies has always been the perspective through which we see ourselves. It's the true measure of all our actions. Man was created to fight in order to prove his right to everything, and prove that his fellow man is not entitled to anything And the existence of competition means the existence of a goal, a necessary goal. In order for us to live according to a specific plan, they told us that a person cannot live robbed of dignity, and that if dignity is lost, it will not be replaced. But it's one of the illusions that we build for ourselves in order to show ourselves in a civilized and humane appearance. But the truth is that we are weak and lacking in dignity, because our history is full of people whose dignity was robbed by tyrants or those who ruled them, and they continued to live as if nothing bad happened. But indeed, there is something that if we lose, it's difficult to live without. And that is the enemy. The big mistake we fall into is not the absence of the enemy, despite its importance, but the danger is in having to create an enemy. And that is because of having to create an enemy. Having to create an enemy means having to create a goal that doesn't exist in the first place. This is fatal in the case of individuals, but it's a disaster in the case of the nation. And if the nation is forced to create an enemy, this means that it's forced to unite its ranks because of internal division or great chaos in the country. And this enemy that they will create is nothing but an illusion. And innocent people will pay the price for it. The price for uniting a nation and making it loyal to its cause is the lives of the innocents who will pay the role of enemies in this great play. We often believe that if we want to find the devil, we must look for the dirtiest, most evil things. Surely the devil is present in these matters. But history always proves the opposite of this. And the truth is that most of the time, the devil was present in the noblest, most honorable, most patriotic, most humane, and most high-principled matters. The devil's biggest trick is not that he convinced man that he did not exist, but rather that he convinced man to look for him in the wrong place. The devil does not want us to be dispersed and isolated from each other. He wants us to be united in one group that represents a certain idea, and we have loyalty to it. In loyalty and unity, the devil is at his strongest. We all have a dream of a lost paradise, which we will fight for, kill for, persecute, and torture for. This dream of paradise gives us entitlement and generates hatred. And hatred generates a bond between members of one group. It also generates fanaticism, and fanaticism eliminates free thinking, works to eliminate the ability to question and criticize, and encourages submission, obedience, and sincerity. And these are not conducive to healthy living. The devil knows that when hatred, fanaticism, and unity spread within one group, the nation's slogan becomes, "It doesn't matter who you are with, but rather you are against whom." We can conclude from this statement that the greatest crime against the devil of mankind, who are tyrants, is depriving them of the enemy, or in a more precise sense, depriving them of create an enemy. This means that we will remain divided. Each one of us will continue to think about himself and his fate, not caring about the fate of his group or party. We will be very careful in our fanaticism and hatred. When a person is alone, he is a coward. How beautiful is cowardice in us at such times? Belonging to a group automatically generates hostility toward another group. If you were alone in a group, there is always kind of strength and a kind of greatness and risk. As a result of we see people who are similar to us in our goal. Therefore, we will become brave and ready to sacrifice ourselves for this goal, which is to eliminate this enemy that stands between us and the paradise that we dream of for ourselves and for our nation. Our problem is that we were raised with naive ideas. They told us that fireworks to light our path, But they didn't say that it might burn us. They also told us to be one united hand against our enemies. But they didn't tell us that this union would make us become puppets in the hand of the devil. We will often fight people like us, and our excuse is that they are our enemies. But in reality, they are not our enemies. Rather, they are an illusion and nothing more. We should not deny the importance of the existence of the enemy, but we should also not deny the importance of choosing the right enemy. In the aftermath of World War I, Germany found itself in a state of economic and political chaos. The Treaty of Versailles of 1919 had imposed massive reparations on Germany, adding to a widespread sense of resentment and humiliation among Germans. In this tense context, Adolf Hitler emerged as the leader of the Nazi Party, exploiting the deep-seated hatred and fear permeating German society, particularly toward Jews and communists. This strategic propaganda significantly aided his rise to power and the establishment of a brutal dictatorship. After the end of the World War I, Germany faced a severe economic crisis with high unemployment and inflation rates. These difficult economic conditions contributed to feelings of frustration and anger among the German people. The Weimar Republic, the democratic government established after the afterwar, was unable to resolve these economic and political issues, leading to increasing distrust among the population. Anti-Semitism had been entrenched in European society for centuries, but Hitler and the Nazi Party took it to unprecedented levels. In his book Mein Kampf, Hitler blamed Jews for many of Germany's problems, including the defeat in World War I and the subsequent economic crisis. The Nazis used propaganda to incite the German public against Jews, accusing them of controlling the economy and media and undermining the nation's moral and cultural values. This hatred was not mere rhetoric. After the Nazis came to power, anti-Jewish policies were systemically implemented. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 deprived Jews of German citizenship and civil rights, paving the way for further persecution. Simultaneously, there was widespread fear of communism spreading after the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia 1917. Hitler portrayed communists as an existential threat to Germany, exploiting the panic many Germans felt about the possibility of a communist revolution in their country. The Nazis linked Jews and communists, intensifying people's fear and sense of danger. Hitler and the Nazi propaganda machine used multiple means to influence German public opinion. Newspapers, posters, films, and public speeches were all part of a widespread propaganda campaign. Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi Minister of Propaganda, was responsible for crafting compelling messages that stirred emotions and mobilized the masses to support the Nazis. These messages were filled with hatred and incitement against Jews and communists, creating an atmosphere of fear and polarization in society. Hitler's speeches relied on a dramatic style, using powerful body language and a passionate voice to capture the audience's attention and evoke their emotions. Jews and communists were depicted as internal enemies that had to be eradicated to achieve German revival. In the federal elections of 1932, the Nazi Party secured a significant portion of the vote, making it the largest party in the Reichstag German parliament. Although the Nazis did not gain an absolute majority, political pressures led President Paul von Hindenburg to appoint Hitler as a Chancellor of Germany on January 30, 1933. Once in power, Hitler began dismantling democratic institutions and turning the country into a dictatorship. Hitler exploited the Reichstag fire in February 1933 as a pretext to suppress communist opposition and issue an emergency decree, granting the government broad powers to curtail civil liberties. This was followed by the banning of all opposing political parties, leaving the Nazi Party as the sole legal party in Germany. After President Heinsberg's death in August 1934, Hitler merged the office of the president with that of the chancellor, declaring himself Führer, supreme leader of Germany. The Nazi regime became based on the cult of personality around Hitler, and security agencies like the Gestapo, secret police, were used to silence any dissent. Hitler continued to use hatred against Jews and communists as a means to unify the nation and justify his repressive policies. Under Hitler's rule, a broad program of rearmament and military rebuilding was implemented, which helped reduce unemployment and boost the economy. This temporary economic success bolstered Hitler's popularity and convinced the public that his regime could achieve stability and progress, increasing their support for him. Hitler's policies based on hatred and incitement led to catastrophic results. Millions of Jews, communists, and other minorities were persecuted, culminating in the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews were murdered. Hitler's aggressive policies also led to the outbreak of World War II, resulting in the deaths of tens of millions of people and the devastation of large parts of Europe. Hitler's rise to power was a result of his cunning exploitation of the negative feelings and hatred towards Jews and communists in German society. He used this hatred as an effective tool to achieve his political ambitions, ultimately leading to one of the darkest periods in human history. By understanding this historical era, we can recognize the importance of being vigilant against propaganda and hatred that can lead to devastating consequences. This story serves as a warning to future generations about the dangers of manipulating negative human emotions and how much actions can lead to unprecedented disasters. A deep understanding of these events helps us build a more tolerant and just society, capable of resisting the destructive temptations of propaganda and manipulation.